Since it's so early, I think we need a little exercise. I'm going to talk about ethics today, an ethic, a new water ethic. And I want to make a point about that. So I want you to work with me here for a second. If you are eligible to vote in the United States, please stand up. Okay, this is the electorate of today. This is the modern electorate. If you are female, please sit down. If you are any race other than white, please sit down. Okay, if you don't own property, a house or land, please sit down. Okay, there's the electorate of 1789 right there. Looks really different from the electorate of today, right? Okay, the electorate of 1789, you can sit down now. So what's that got to do with the water ethic? Well, what that tells us is that we can change. We can change in a big way. We can really change people's minds. And what was considered totally ethical and moral in one era might be considered totally unethical and wrong in another era. And I think what's happening in water today is we're finding out that a lot of the things that we used to think were ethical and were okay are not okay. And we're developing a new ethic in water. Now, here's why we need a new ethic. You might wonder, what's so bad about our current ethic? But we make up new ethics all the time. They're constantly changing. We basically just make them up as we go along. But here's what we did. Like a lot of species, we like to divvy things up, right? So we divvied up the land. I'm from Utah. I was telling Ken last night, let's see, in Utah, we've got dope on one side, we've got prostitution on the other, and in Utah, we got Utah. So we like to divvy things up. In Utah, we have BLM lands, National Park Service lands, we've got Forest Service land, we've got the Department of Defense, we've got Indian reservations, we've got counties. There are 500 local government jurisdictions in Utah. 500. Got, I think, 29 counties. So we've completely chopped up the land. You know the political term balkanization. We balkanized everything. We chopped everything up into these little pieces. We've also done that with the water. So we've doled out some water under the prior appropriation doctrine. So you get your little share, and you get your little share. This state gets its allotment, and this state gets its allotment, and this basin gets theirs, and this basin gets theirs. And so we've chopped up the water into tiny little pieces. I mean, we've even chopped up air. In Utah, we have class 1 air, we have class 2 air. Or in Salt Lake, we have class really crappy air. I'm not sure that's the technical term for it, but that's what it is. So we've chopped all these things up. So that's the first thing we did. The second thing we did is we told people that you get to do pretty much whatever you want with your little piece. So if you're the state of Nevada, for example, you're allocated this water. This is your water, and you can do with it what you want. In complete disregard to how it impacts other people. We even say that to a lot of private landowners. There's some limits, but not very many. So we chopped everything up into these little pieces, and then we said everybody gets to go out and do what they want with their piece. The third problem on top of that is scarcity. That system worked quite well when there was a lot to go around. Remember, there was a time when we just gave away land out west. Oh yeah, you want a chunk? It's yours. Here it is. You want some water? It's yours. The minute state engineer's office will give you a chunk. All right. That worked quite well when there was lots of water and land. Last time I looked, there was not a lot and land to hand out. We're not handing it out. Water is kind of like land. They just don't make it like we used to. So now we have conditions of scarcity. So that's the three things we're dealing with. Yeah, we chop everything up, tell people they can do what they want with their junk, and now all this is happening under conditions of scarcity. The big problem with that approach is that it's all system. There's a reason why we use the word ecosystem. It's all connected. So we have this system where everything's chopped apart into these little pieces, except it all works as a system. And no place is that more obvious, this disjuncture between what we've done and what we need, than when it comes to river policy. Rivers have a bad habit of moving. The water doesn't stay put in one jurisdiction. Even rivers don't stay put in one jurisdiction. Even they move. So it doesn't fit well into this concise little well-regulated, well-engineered system of dividing everything into chunks. So what we really need in terms of a new water ethic is a system that helps match the realities of rivers to our public policy. That's what we don't have right now. That's what we need. We're moving in that direction. There's lots of good reasons to see that coming, but that's really what the new water ethic is all about. It's really about thinking of rivers as a commons, as a common resource. So part of the new water ethic is developing this much more public, participatory kind of governing situation. So can somebody tell me when I have about 5 minutes left? Okay, you'll do that. Okay. How many hours do I have? Okay. So we got to develop a totally new water ethic here. And this ethic has to look at rivers like systems. And this is happening. And remember, we can change. We can make fundamental changes. And I think we're going to have to do it out of necessity. Now, there's really three responses that we can do under these conditions of scarcity, where there's this disjuncture between what we need and what we have. Three different responses. One response is we can develop a new water ethic. Okay, that's one response. A second response is you can look at this situation and say, maybe I don't like it, but that's the way it is. I need to deal with reality here. I'm willing to negotiate this new reality. I'm willing to at least compromise on some things. Or the third response is you go out and you hire lawyers and lobbyists and you make campaign contributions to whatever politician says, I promise I won't change the status quo. And grab your gun and you say, I'm going to fight reality to the bitter end here. Now, think about those three options in the long run. Which one is most attractive? Which one actually will serve us best in the long run? And the answer is the new water. So even though this may sound draconian, even though it may sound like it's asking people to change too much, it's the best option out of the three. Now, not everybody's convinced of that. We've got a lot of people out west who are choosing the third option right now. Right? They're gonna protect the status quo right down to the bitter end. And that's okay. That's politics. That's the way it happens. But ultimately, I think the new water ethic will win out. Just like every other fundamental social and cultural change that's happened in America, it's been a bitter fight. It hasn't been easy. It's not easy to make people change, especially when they're sort of fearful of it. But that's what's going to happen. And in fact, it's happening right now. A few years ago, I had a student come into my office, and His name was Zach Frankel. And Zach had just graduated. I think he had a degree in biology. And Zach had a long ponytail and was dressed in cutoffs and sandals. Looked like he just got off a river trip. And he said he was worried about Utah's rivers, and they were damming them, and they were diverting and destroying them, and he was going to save Utah's rivers. And he's going to go out and lobby the legislature. Going to lobby that legislature. And I remember expressing maybe a mild degree of skepticism. You just picture him up there trying to lobby the Utah legislature. A paragon of progressive thinking. And I'd done a book on Utah water policy, and he said, I want to see your notes. I want to put up on this and get back. So I said, okay, back, you can borrow my rock. Next thing I hear, Zach started a new organization called the Utah Rivers Council. So that's always the first step in the right direction. You start a new organization, right? The Friends of, or something like that. So that's good. You got an interest group here. So then about a year later, I get a call from Zach, and he said, I want you to come to a conservancy district meeting. Now, I don't know how many water conservancy district meetings you've been to, but usually they're incredibly boring. It's just, they're just really bad. It's like a visit to the beef jerky museum. It just doesn't hold your interest. But he said this one's going to be a good one. And all the water buffaloes, all the high-ranking officials from the water districts are going to be there. Okay, let's maybe do it. So I show up, and here's Zach. He's got this great haircut, and he's in a three-piece business suit. He's looking really sharp. Looks like a banker now. And they had foolishly given Zach about 20 minutes. And these water conservancy districts, led by the Central Utah Water Conservancy District, wanted to build a dam called Monts Hollow Dam on Diamond Fork River. Turns out Diamond Fork River just happened to be one of Zach's favorite rivers, and one that he really wanted to save. So Zach shows up. He's got a big flip chart on a stand like this, and he's all super prepared. And his 20 minutes begin. He starts blasting out data at him, flips the chart over, and here's another chart, here's another chart. And he'd invited the press, which is unusual. Usually they don't, even though it's critically important, there was never come. The press is all lined up. And at one point, one of them said something like, wait a minute, I didn't quite get that data. He said, no problem. I got a handout here with all this data on it. Hands it out to all the people in the press. And they're just scribbling away, and they're taking notes. And at the end of his 20 minutes, he had absolutely devastated the rationale for building Monts Hollow Dam on Diamond Fork River. That's all he wanted. They gave him 20 minutes, and he killed them with it. Absolutely nailed them to the wall. When he got done with his 20 minutes, you could hear a pin drop in that room. Now, all these very powerful water figures are sitting there just going, oh my goodness, who is this guy? Ask him to answer that phone or something. And finally, one of the elderly, and they're all white guys, right? I hate to say it, but they're all old white guys, all lined up in like the old white guys' chairs. And finally, one of them says, well, Zach, you just don't understand. Well, of course, the real problem was that Zach understood all too well. And he knew how to hit these people. He knew the rationale was bad. He knew the taxes were bad. He knew the environmental impact was bad. And he just let the world know it. And for the first time, really, in Utah history, these water conservancy districts realized that the public was going to take a look at what they're doing, find out how they're spending the public's money, what they're doing to the public's rivers. The rivers did not belong to these water conservancy district officials. They acted like it belonged to them until that day. After that day, they didn't act like that. Utah water politics really crossed the Rubicon that day. And things were different from there. Every time they said we want to spend another $100 million and build a dam or another diversion, the press was on it, taxpayers were on it, local water users, people downstream, everybody was now burned on it. It really changed Utah water politics. About a year after that meeting, the Central Utah Water Conservancy District announced that after doing further study, they decided they really didn't need to build a solid dam. There's no dam on the Diamond Fork River today because one skinny U student decided to get active and do something about it. Just one guy, one person. And when this happened, when I walked out of that meeting, I just went, of all the things that I'm a political scientist by training, but of all the things politically that are going on in this country, I think this might be the most interesting political phenomenon. How can one person, not what we usually call powerful, not rich, not famous, not a movie star, not a big lobbyist, no political connections, no political experience whatsoever when he started, complete neophyte, how can one person like that fundamentally change politics? How can one person like that actually save a river? What a concept. I just thought that was so radical. So I thought, I wonder if this is happening any place else in America. Can this actually be happening? And I started looking, and first I found dozens of river protection and river restoration projects. And then I found hundreds, and then I found thousands. I found out that there are thousands of river restoration and river protection projects going on all over America. I was absolutely amazed. And that's why I said, I got to write a book about this. This is something. So let me tell a few river stories. I have a feeling you might be interested in some river stories, right? A little interest in that in this room. Okay, I got one yet, so I'll go with that. But they just illustrate the fact that we've really changed, and the politics of rivers has really entered this new era of water ethic that embraces participatory, open, democratic decision making and looks at the whole system, the ecosystem, rather than just chopping it up and giving out all the parts and in the process destroying rivers. Let me tell the story of Robert Boone, one of my favorite people. Robert Boone is what we call a river walker. He just likes to go out and walk along rivers. Maybe some of you like to do that. He'd take a small son with him. He lived in Washington, D.C. at the time. And he had a small part in the effort to clean up the Potomac River. Right, but his favorite place was a small river that actually flows through the district of Washington, D.C., called the Anacostia. The Anacostia River arises in Maryland and flows into the Potomac. And I'm going to use a loaded term here, on the bad side of town. When I first made it in far, I want to go see the Anacostia River. Somebody said, well, you don't want to go there. That's on the bad side of town. Of course, bad side means it's where people of color are predominantly low income living. That's what that means. The Anacostia watershed, that area along there, was actually settled by escaping slaves during the Civil War. If they could get there, and Maryland was a slave state. Washington, D.C. had just outlawed slavery, so if they could get down to this swampland on the south side of the District of Columbia, they would be safe. So that's why so many poor black people live along the Anacostia. It actually started as a way to escape slavery. Over the years, what happened was that the city of Washington built an extensive sewage and drainage program, and they could have built it so that it drained out into the Potomac River. Who lives along the Potomac River? Okay. That's where rich white people live, right? Those homes are expensive. So they built the entire system to flow south and dump all the sewage of the city into the Anacostia River, where the poor black people live. Robert Boone was out there river walking one day and kind of finding out about what had happened, this history, and he sees this plume of something coming off the side of the river, and he does a little investigation. He finds out the Navy Yard, which was America's very first naval base set up by Washington, or General Washington, was actually polluting the Anacostia River, PCBs and other really nasty stuff. So Robert Boone says, I'm going to form an organization, right? Step one, you form an organization. Calls it the Anacostia Watershed Society. They said, now I got to go to step two. I got to find a lawyer. So I goes to a friend of his who's a lawyer, and he says, let's sue the Washington Navy Yard. It's like this icon of power right there on the Anacostia. Let's sue the big boys. So his lawyer friend says, okay, we'll do that. I think we've got a pretty good case. So they sue the Navy Yard. And like all polluters, the Navy said, well, we're innocent. We deny it. We're not having any negative impacts. Isn't that what polluters always say? They always say it. But then something really interesting happened. The commander of the Navy Yard looked at the data, looked at the fact that they really were polluting the Anacostia River, and suddenly somebody cared and brought it to the public's attention. And he had a change of heart. And he said, instead of fighting these people, we should be working with them, because our mission is to protect the people of the United States, not to harm them. So we have absolutely no business pouring toxic waste into the Anacostia River. And he announced he was withdrawing from a lawsuit. He was cleaning up the base. And from then on, he and Robert Boone became soldiers together in helping to protect the Anacostia. Now, Robert didn't stop there. He started looking at these CSOs. Does everybody in this room probably know what a CSO? Combined Sewage Overflow. Sound kind of nasty? Because it is kind of nasty. All the CSOs for the city of Washington flowed into the Anacostia River. By the time they got a big rain, it overwhelmed the sewage treatment process, and raw sewage flowed right into the Anacostia. So the Anacostia Watershed Society sued the city of Washington, D.C. Now, the problem, the reason why nobody had ever cleaned that up is because the residents of Washington, D.C. are not represented in Congress. They don't have a senator. The rest of us all have two. They don't have any. They have one non-voting representative. So all these federal facilities in Washington were draining their sewage into an area where the people had virtually no representation. The section in my book about this is called Too Many Federal Toilets, Not Enough Federal Senators. So somebody had to embarrass them and cajole them and sue them into doing something about that. So that became the goal of the Anacostia Watershed Society. And they did it. They succeeded. So today, right now, Washington is developing a new sewage system that will not put untreated sewage in the Anacostia River. He worked closely with the people of color in that area. He became allies. The first neighborhood meeting he went to, they said saving rivers. They told him this was based. They said saving rivers is what wealthy white people do. We're worried about our children. We're worried about their safety. And Robert helped convince them that having a clean, toxic-free river was not only a community resource, it was about safety. So they became his allies. I went down there. Anybody here been down the Anacostia River? It's amazing. You can't believe you're in Washington, D.C. It's like this little wildlife park right within spitting distance of the U.S. Capitol, which I think is maybe what I did when I went by. I can't remember. I saw a real eagle. First time I've been in Washington, D.C. Usually the only eagles you see are on Pelicans and Flagstaffs, right? I saw a real one in Washington, D.C. What a change. What a change. So, again, one person, just one person, made an incredible difference. So do I have time for another story? I have 5 minutes, and it's going to have to be a quick one. Phyllis Clausen and the Condit Dam on the White Salmon River. Pacific Corp owned Condit Dam. No fish ladder, absolutely destroyed a beautiful fishery. The white salmon flows south out of Washington into the Columbia River. Phyllis Clausen, she's about this big. I think she was about 70 when she helped start the Friends of the White Salmon. She was about 90, I think, last year. And maybe you saw this. You can if you YouTube Condit Dam, you'll see a picture. There's Condit Dam, and it all looks very quiet and nice. And all of a sudden, there's this horrendous explosion, and this giant plume of smoke, and then mud and debris and water blowing out of it. And they drained the lake behind Condit Dam in just a few minutes. And setting up on the bank in a tent is tiny little Phyllis Clausen sitting there watching this on the video cameras. So we had Pacific Corp on this side and little Phyllis Clausen on this side. And Phyllis Clausen won. And they're removing Condit Dam as we speak right now. So the White Salmon River, well, they called it White Salmon because it had so many salmon. It's coming back to life right now. Same thing happened on taking out 2 dams on the Elba Lines Canyon and Elba Dam. It's coming back to life. That movement was really started by a guy named Robert Elba, son of the Lord Fallen tribe. Indian man who said, the reason why our people are here is because the salmon were here. The salmon are gone because of the dams. I'm going to take those dams. And they said to Robert Ellison the same thing they said to Zach Franco, Phyllis Clausen, and everybody else that wants to restore a river. They said, you're nuts. You're crazy. You cannot win against the establishment. You cannot actually pull this off. You must be crazy. And then it happens. It actually happens. So what we're really seeing in river politics today is that we're taking back our rivers. We're taking control of rivers that belong to all of us. They do not belong to the people who have divvied up the rivers. They belong to you and me. And that's the new politics of rivers. That's what the new is all about. We have to rivers. How's that for time? Are we good? Can we have some questions? Okay, we can have some questions. I don't have any answers, but we can have some questions.
So that was a great story about the Anacostia River, how they were able to deal with the pollution. But having been there, I know it's still a problem from all the upstream development in Maryland. Almost all of suburban Maryland still drains into the Anacostia. And so I'm just wondering, do you have stories of people that have been able to kind of tackle that larger problem where it's not this non-point source pollution, but this sort of larger, sprawling problem that contributes to water degradation?
Yes, Robert sued Maryland as well. And he's actually working with the Maryland congressional delegation. It looks really bad, but what he's done is made it really obvious that Maryland is polluting these poor black neighborhoods. Aren't you a scumbag for what you're doing here. And he sort of embarrassed them into saying, yeah, I guess we need to do something about that. And what the difference is, but Maryland does have somebody in the House, and they do have 2 senators, so they can get money to help deal with some of those issues. Non-point pollution, of course, is a very difficult task, but again, that's where our ethic is changing. Right now, if you spread chemical fertilizers on your farm or your lawn, or herbicides, or pesticides, and that runs off into the local water course, that's okay. People think that's okay, right? 20 years from now, I submit, maybe even 10 years from now, that would be not only illegal, it would be considered immoral, that you cannot do that. And what's going to drive that is what's happening in the Gulf. There's a huge dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico now because of all the agricultural chemicals that are in the Mississippi River. You can trace it. Here's the mouth of the Mississippi. It kind of flows this way. Here's this giant dead zone where the fishing industry is dying because nothing lives in it because it's been polluted by non-point pollution sources. So I think that's going to be the driver to changing the law on non-point sources. Great question.
As a resident of Maryland, just a follow up to what you talked about on the Anacostia.
Did I say anything bad about Maryland?
No, but the Anacostia Watershed Society did start everything, but they've grown a fabulous group. I'm kind of making a plug for partnerships again. They started a great group of partners, including Virginia, D.C., and Maryland. They signed what they call the Potomac Trash Treaty about 10 years ago, swearing to clean up the Potomac and Anacostia watersheds by this year. They've almost cleaned them up from trash through traps and so forth. D.C. started a bag tax, a 5-cent bag tax 4 years ago, and almost $5 million that they've retrieved from those bag taxes goes back to cleaning up the rivers. Maryland started a bag tax last year, and Virginia will start one next year. So it started the ball rolling, and they're doing great.
Yeah. And I think we'll see bag taxes or alkaline plastic bags all over America. It's going to take some time. It'll get to Utah in about 20 years, just like everything else. We're still listening to Elvis Presley.
Hi, I just had a question about the Anacostia River. Because I used to canoe there back when I was in college in 1972, and I remember that every time after a really big rain, it smelled ungodly. So I just wondered what year that was actually done.
Lisa may actually know the answer to this better than me. I think they're putting in the new treatment system now. Does anybody else have more data on that?
It's still pretty bad, but not. If you go down there, you won't see the trash, and it only smells a little bit, or when it's a really bad flood. But it's the site of the new baseball stadium. In 10 years, you won't recognize the development that's going there. So I know a fellow who was a blacksmith who had a little shop down there, and he bought it from nothing, and he just retired. He sold an acre for $5 million for 1 acre. So there's tremendous development on it. So it's doing really great.
So the lesson is go into blacksmithing to make millions.
Other questions?
Are we done? Okay, time for coffee. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.